Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Wright Flyer. I'm Randy Wright, and I'll be your captain on this solo flight special edition of our state-of-the-art radio program. Folks, this will be the final boarding call, so if you please, claim your seats, fasten your seatbelts, kick back, relax, and enjoy the show while I go ahead and delve into the pre-flight checklist, as there really is a lot of news and information to get to before I may fully indulge you with your in-flight entertainment. Well, folks, what we see is that once again, Donald J. Trump is not focusing on what really matters for this 2016 presidential election cycle. This is something that my first officer, Jeremy Graventon, and I have oft-times reiterated on previous episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, primarily that he's just not interested in being President of the United States of America. And if you stop and think about it, this makes a whole lot of sense. And the reason that I can say that with the utmost certainty and conviction that I do, sitting here, speaking into this microphone, conveying this message unto you, is because there really isn't much for him to gain. Nothing that he could really gather from it. Stop and think about it for a moment, folks. Donald J. Trump is 70 years old. That makes him older now, trying to vie for the highest office in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and vibrant community of popular sovereigns of ours, than Ronald Reagan was when he decided to vie for the highest office in the land. It shows that at 70 years of age, there's really not much that Trump could do. He's really coming in on his twilight years, and I don't think that he has the wherewithal or the energy to truly pursue being president of these United States of America. That being said, he certainly has shown a lot of energy for a 70-year-old man, particularly when he went out on the attack against Texas Senator Ted Cruz. The amount of vitriol and the animosity with which he went after the true constitutional compositionists that had been vying for the gutless opposition party, or GOP's, nomination as well, just speaks volumes about what it is that Donald J. Trump believes and where his loyalties lie and exactly what it was that he was hoping to achieve. And so, again, we see that his focus here is not on the presidency. Rather, it's on perhaps creating a new media empire. After all, Trump has on more than one occasion claimed that he is greedy for the nation, greedy for himself. Of course, nothing could be further from the truth with respect to him being greedy for the nation other than to capitalize off of the nation, to dupe disillusioned conservatives, to make them support him so that it helps his close friend and confidant in Hillary Rodham Clinton. After all, if you recall, she had appeared along with her little unfaithful husband there, Billy Bob, at Trump's third wedding to the current Czech thumper, the Slovenian Malaria Trumpolini. But, of course, in true fashion, Trump had been snubbed by the Clintons because he had not been invited to attend Chelsea's wedding. So what does it all boil down to? What does this all show us? What is the modus operandi of the mafioso quafioso? Well, it's what it's always been with him. It's about garnering power for himself, holding that power unto himself, and expanding that power unto himself and to his family. That's always been the Trump way. That's what the Trump family has done for generation upon generation. But does that make it accurate? Does that make it fair? Does that make it honest? The answer to that question is no. It's not fair and it's not honest. It's just typical Trump fashion. But we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, have tried to warn you that he did have ulterior motives. Of course, the Lion Branch Trumpidians simply wish to disregard everything that we had to say. They went out of their way to try and label us as not understanding the truth, as being disconnected from reality, for not having an understanding of anything that's happening in this disastrous 2016 presidential election cycle. Of course, nothing could be further from the truth than what they are attempting to say. Nothing could be further divided or divorced from reality than what the Lion Branch Trumpidians convey to anyone. And partly this is because they suffer from acute ostrich syndrome, where they shove their heads up their posterior as opposed to the sand. But we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, have delved in more deeply to this. It's why we have been the first to expose the two alter egos used by Donald Julius Caesar Trumpolini, at least with respect to this 2016 election cycle. It's why we have, for nearly a year now, folks, as September 11th of 2016 will mark our 1-year anniversary of taking you over the friendly airwaves and leaving you with that indelible yet pure sense of enlightenment that we always have warned you as to the great danger presented and posed by the mafioso quafioso. It really is that cut and dry, that black and white. Trump doesn't have your best interests in heart. Trump has Trump's best interests at heart. And this is why he's trying to push for the establishment of his own media empire. And Steve Deese today brought up something that I thought was interesting and on point here. It dealt with the fact that the hiring of Stephen K. Bannon from Breitbart Media, would be a perfect selection for a CEO of a presidential candidate's campaign if that presidential candidate was in the market for establishing his own media network. Now, the question is, what media network would Trump essentially take over for his own predilections, for his own twisted machinations? Maybe it would be the failing Newsmax TV. After all, Newsmax has become quite the media outlet that is in the New York billionaire, businessman, real estate tycoon, and all-around vulgarian's back pocket. And that's one of the reasons why, folks, that I have named this 2016 election cycle the election cycle of betrayal. Because we have been betrayed by those who claim to have at one time at least, been stalwart members of the alleged conservative punditry and commensurate. It really does show that this election cycle has been about betrayal. People selling out their values, people abandoning their principles, people essentially being shills for something that we truly have no place for in an open and honest and above all free society like that of the United States of America. Again, it does cause one to pause and to ponder exactly what it is that Trump was hoping to accomplish. Well, he certainly appears to be one of those types of candidates that is a plant. It may be a Russian plant, as we've seen that his former campaign bigwig in Paul Manafort had undeniable ties to pro-Putin forces in the Ukraine. Or it could be that he is a plant for Hillary Rotten Clinton, because as I have already mentioned on this evening's Solo Flight Special Edition, he had these connections with Hillary Clinton as well. But the fact of the matter is, we see that time and again, he is pushing the envelope, trying to be something that he was never at the vast majority of his 70 years spent on God's green earth. He's trying to convince disillusioned conservatives that he is one of them, that he is out there fighting for them, that he has their interests at heart, when in fact nothing could be further from the truth. This is the stark, harsh reality that we must face, both as a nation and as a people. But more particularly than even that, it is something that we as a political party and movement must face as well. Trump essentially satisfies all of the two-dimensional caricatures and stereotypes that the left attempts to pigeonhole the right with here in the United States of America. It runs the gambit of essentially satisfying the ludicrous, made-up notion of the so-called Republican war on women. It satisfies the so-called and ludicrous, made-up Republican war on minorities. And it really does assume this divisive populist strain. But America is above populism. America is much greater than populism. We are a nation of great accomplishments and achievements. The problem is that the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists, as we have oftentimes warned and reiterated on previous episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, have gone out of their way to the United States of America, both as a nation and as a people. They have infiltrated our various information media news outlets and sources. They have infiltrated the ivory tower of academia from coast to coast and border to border, indoctrinating the up-and-coming generations with the hope of being able to continue that trend for even those generations which have yet to be born. They have pitted American citizen against American citizen. And for what? For what purpose are they hoping to gain here? Well, it speaks volumes that they want to pit American citizen against American citizen in the hopes that we tear out one another's jugulars, in the hopes that there is no way for the American people to overcome these trials and adversities and hurdles and obstacles that they attempt to place into our path. But truth be told, these people will never be able to dominate the American spirit and soul unless we, in our capacity as the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic, so. You see, this is why that old saying rings true, that America will never be conquered by some external force, that America will only ever be toppled from within, from cultural rot from within, from societal decay from within. That is the only way that these frauds, these hucksters, these carnival barkers and snake oil salesmen will ever be able to tear America apart at her societal fabric and seams. Again, the American people wield far greater power than they realize, and that is why the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists have gone to such great lengths and extents to try and tear the American nation apart, to try and irreparably harm who we are, both as a nation and as a people. It's all interconnected, it's all interwoven, it's all part of this greater predilection that they wish to unleash upon the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, we the people. Again, this is why we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, have gone out of our way to warn you, to try and inform you, to have you foster that fluent and working knowledge and understanding of our shared United States Constitution, and thereby your fundamental and inalienable rights which were endowed to you by your Creator, who happens to be none other than the God of nature himself. These are the undeniable truths that we must awaken to. This is what we must accept, both as a nation and as a people. Then and only then can we begin to place this nation back onto the path to prosperity. But that's where Donald J. Trump enters into the picture yet again. He makes it all the more difficult to accomplish this. Why? Because he suffers from foot and mouth disease. He goes out of his way to say the most verbose, outlandish things that, of course, threatens to alienate even greater swaths of the American electorate. Again, this is what we have been trying to warn you about. This is why we said that he could never hope to truly vanquish or overcome the candidacy of Hillary Rotten Clinton. And of course, he was the only one of that large base of candidates, the 17 candidates who vied for the gutless opposition party or GOP nomination to vie for the highest office in the land, who simply could not defeat Hillary Rotten Clinton. He was ill-prepared for it. He does not have the wherewithal to do so. And of course, this is why my first officer, Jeremy Grapington, and I, and indeed our first Air Marshal, Mr. Nelson Ward, have been warning you about him. For many, many years, he had assumed the hard line, frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftist positions, irrespective of the detrimental and deleterious impact that it would have on the culture, society, nation, and people of the United States of America. He was in it for his own gain. He was in it for his own twisted machinations, which truly have no place in an open and honest society like that of the United States of America. But again, the Lion Branch Trumpidians, suffering from their acute ostrich syndrome, simply wish to ignore these dire predictions and warnings that we have come forth with as we fly over the friendly airwaves. Again, we must look at these things in an truly open and objective fashion, to divorce ourselves from our emotions, to not allow ourselves to be easily manipulated by the charlatans and hucksters that have become the new age profiteers of the American system of polity. Again, when you look into yourself, when you begin to look through these things and seek the truth, which shall ultimately set you free, you will find that there is so much more to what makes us free than any supposed messianic figure. And that's the problem. The problem is both sides of the political aisle have convinced a large portion of the American electorate that the government has the solution. If you go back to the things that Donaldolph Julius Caesar Trumpolini had said during the Republican National Convention, which was held in Cleveland, Ohio, you'll recall that he basically gave in that long, rambling, record-breaking in length speech that he gave all of these things that government would do. Not that he would unlock the chains and shackles of tyranny, oppression, and despotism, thereby allowing the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty to take the actions that would be necessary to bring this nation back to the path of prosperity. No, he was once again doubling down on the things that he has said for the vast majority of his life. Positions that are diametrically opposed to what we value as true constitutional compositionists, or those who believe in the original composition of that sacred societal compact or contract, the greatest contract ever devised by the hands of men, yet divinely inspired by providence above. He doesn't believe in that, because he has oftentimes admitted from his own lips that he's never found any intrinsic value or inherent value within the four corners of that sacred document. The foundational documents of the United States of America define who we are. They outline and mandate the proper scope and application of government, and they essentially codify the fundamental and inalienable rights that were endowed to us by our Creator. You see, that was one of the brilliant things, one of the signs of the infinite wisdom and foresight of our founding fathers, that they understood that true freedom requires that the people be the ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty. That was revolutionary. That was something that had not been embraced by any nation on the face of God's green earth prior to the point of America's Declaration of Independence some 240 years ago. And in this 240th anniversary of the fight for liberty, I think that we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, are duty-bound, obligated, and carry the onus of the responsibility to remind the American people that we are so fortunate that our founding fathers had recognized the natural order of things, that they based this entire constitutionally endowed federalist representative republican form of government on those natural law tenets which by their own very nature are timeless, meaning they are just as applicable today as they were 235 years ago, as God willing they will be 235 years from today. It's not easy to admit that. It's not easy to see that we must overcome the hurdles and obstacles of a free people. And of course, these hurdles and obstacles are put in place by these frothing at the mouth Fabian socialists because they are, by their nature, diametrically opposed to the free will of the American people, the ability of the American people to think for themselves. Remember, they want to control everything. They want to control your thought. They want to outlaw whatever type of thought process or pattern goes against their twisted machinations, and they will stop at nothing to achieve their goals. That's why they have been working so meticulously, so relentlessly, so tirelessly for the past century and a half now towards the ultimate achievement of their goals, come hell or high water. So again, they're not doing this for the interest of you. And Donald J. Trump has been the biggest enabler of them, for damn near 40 years now. Ever since he's been in the public eye, he has been the one that's gone out and funded the most atrocious offenders of these frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists. And he does it against your interests. He does it in such a way as to make you feel as though he is acting out in your best interest, that he's looking out for what truly matters to you, when in fact nothing could be further from the truth. Again, this is why we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, go out of our way to provide you with the truth. And it's going to really be like a grand spectacle on some professional wrestling match. Not because he believes in what he's doing. It's all about spectacle. He is a great showman. He's all about theatrics. But America doesn't need a theatrical master. America needs a constitutionalist to guide us back to the way to prosperity. And that can only be done, truly only be done, if we go back to strict adherence to the United States Constitution. But so many don't want to. So many don't want to because they believe that their power is all consuming, that their power is all the more important, that they can achieve what we need, irrespective of whether that's true or not. You see, they think they know what's best, and they think that you are incapable of thinking or acting or choosing what is in your best interest. Of course, that's a bunch of nonsense. That's a bunch of bovine excrement that has no place in an open and honest society like that of the United States of America. But it is not easy to get over that. And, of course, when we are just so caught up in all of this, it shows that they have found a way to penetrate the American way of thought and entertainment. Why? Why do we have to have entertainment as a form of leadership? Or why do we think that being an entertainer will somehow make you smart or qualified to lead the country? It just doesn't. One is not qualified by the entertaining factor. One is qualified by the Constitution, by their adherence to the Constitution. But we have forgotten that as a nation and as a people. We have allowed ourselves to be swept up in these penultimate concerns that truly have no place in an open and honest society like that of the United States of America. But again, we can only begin to place the United States of America back onto the path to prosperity by embracing what it is that makes us great. You see, that's part of the reason why Jeremy, Nelson, and I have had such objections to this laughably hollow, shallow, empty, and meaningless platitude that has become the campaign slogan for the Trump train, that of Make America Great Again. First of all, it presupposes that these United States of America ever once ceased being great. I don't believe that the United States of America ever did cease being great. The United States has always been great, and the Constitution is what makes us great. But Trump doesn't realize that. Trump doesn't care about that. Trump doesn't understand that. And Trump is certainly not going to reach out to discover the truth behind that, because Trump is more interested in amassing power for Trump. Nothing less, nothing more. That's what he has always done. That is what he will always do. And that is why, in my mind, he is holistically disqualified from ever vying for the highest office in the land. He should never be entrusted with the reins of political power in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and vibrant community of popular sovereigns of ours. Now, I know that that's not going to be a popular message with the Lion Branch Trumpidians, but to be frank, I don't care. I don't care because he is not the leader that he should be. And has anyone noticed that he's just terrible on a teleprompter? He can't read. He's just out there. He's like a child. And of course, that's something we've reiterated before, too. He really is a petulant child. But what America needs now is a leader who understands America and Americans, who understands our Constitution, who knows what is contained within the clear and concise language inside the four corners of that sacred document. You see, that is what our loyalty is to. That is what we swear allegiance to, because that is the only thing that we, in our capacity as the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, are called to swear allegiance to. Nothing else, nothing more. That is how the United States of America was propelled to such lofty heights in our relatively brief yet illustrious history. But again, this is not what the historical revisionists want you to know. It's not what the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists want you to know. They want you to be in the dark. They want to convince you that they know what's best and that you should simply sit down and shut up. That you should accept whatever twisted machination that they wish to foist upon you, irrespective of the detrimental impact that that will have on your future and on your ability to be free. And it is just truly out there. It cannot be described as anything other than a destructive force of nature, except that there's nothing natural about Trump. There's nothing natural about anything about him because he is a destructive buffoon. And really, that's how he acts. He is just vicious in the way that he goes after people, in the way that he is a narcissist and just goes after people's appearances. It's not that he attacks political views. It's not that he attacks policy positions or policy specifics, because there isn't anything that he has been specific towards throughout this presidential election cycle, or indeed in the past couple of years, ever since he tried to convince us in a meaningful fashion that somehow he has magically become a conservative. Well, he hasn't managed to convince us here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer. Just as I am sure he probably hasn't been able to convince a vast majority of you, our cherished listening passengers and audience members. He's not even really trying to. This is a marketing ploy. And remember that Trump is a fantastic marketeer. Labeling and branding, that is his bread and butter. That's what the entire Trump industry is built upon. But again, that has no connection with reality. That has no connection with a free and open and honest society like that of the United States of America. That's just who Trump is. It's what Trump does. And it's not about caring for us. It's not about advancing a conservative point of view. And indeed, some of his most vocal and ardent acolytes and supporters have made no bones about it that he's not a conservative, that he has never been a conservative, that he doesn't hold any of those views in mind. And of course, that's something that we too have been trying to warn you about here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, for going on nearly a year now. But we can overcome the destructive path that is Trumpery. Remember that Trumpery is flashy or showy, but ultimately lacking in value, ultimately worthless. Well, Trump is worthless. Everything he does is the whole thing. It's all about Trump. Trump this, Trump that, Trump everything. It's why he plasters his name all over everything. But that should tell you right here and right now that he is not qualified to be the commander-in-chief of our armed forces or the chief executive officer of these United States of America. You know, folks, there has been a rather disturbing trend that has developed today with respect to the mafioso quafioso. Apparently, there have been naked statues of Donald J. Trump that have been appearing in public spaces in several cities. We're not really sure who was behind this prank, but you have to admit that it goes along the lines of one of the things that has been reiterated throughout this 2016 presidential election cycle, and that is with respect to the Donaldoff, that he is the emperor has no clothing. It doesn't matter what you try to convince him of. It doesn't matter what you try to show him is an inaccurate statement on his part or something that will ultimately end up being disastrous for his campaign. His followers will never tell him that he's not out there with, with no clothing. They just tell him that his new clothing is exciting, that it's this new age thing. They'll parrot the lines espoused by the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media that this 2016 presidential election cycle is the election cycle in which we are to discard with conventional wisdom. But I'm going to sit here and say that it's a bunch of poppycock, that it has no basis in reality, that it is not connected with anything that we hold near and dear in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and vibrant community of popular sovereigns of ours. You see, what is so important to take away from all of this is that we must be resolute and that we must be unwavering in our convictions towards proactively maintaining and safeguarding our fundamental and inalienable rights which were endowed to us by our Creator, the God of nature. But you see, Trump really is this divisive figure. Trump really is one who has hopelessly divided the base of the gutless opposition party, or GOP, thereby assuring that Hillary Clinton will basically have a shoe-in for the general election slated later this November. So ultimately, we have to ask ourselves how this disaster came into being. And of course, the answer to that question, I believe, should be both open and obvious. It's been allowed to come to fruition in that Trump has gone out of his way to attack the American people, to create this truly unacceptable code of conduct and course of conduct that he has exhibited all throughout the primary process and is now exhibiting as he goes into the general election cycle. And one of the things that he did that should have every decent, hard-working, red-blooded American citizen just incensed, fuming with rage and anger, is that he appeared on Sean Hannity's program over there at the Guelph News Network the other night and said that he is going to give the Clintons the benefit of the doubt when it comes to the fraudulent funding at the ill-fated Clinton Foundation. You know, the very foundation that he himself donated over $100,000 to in years past. Now, isn't it funny? During the primary process, he wouldn't give Texas Senator Ted Cruz the benefit of the doubt when it came to that super PAC that was in no way, shape, or form connected with Ted Cruz, that released the magazine photos that the current Czech thumper, Malaria Trumpolini, had posed nude for GQ magazine many years ago. No, he used that as the perfect opportunity to go out and attack Ted Cruz's wife, to release confidential medical reports about her own mental health, to viciously and savagely attack her appearance, and then to claim that Ted Cruz brought it on to himself when in fact nothing could be further from the truth. This is the sort of diabolical loser that we're dealing with. And no, folks, this has nothing to do with Ted Cruz having suspended his campaign. It has nothing to do with individualism. It has everything to do with the idea and the notion that our founding fathers expected this constitutionally endowed, federalist, representative, Republican form of government of ours to be a virtuous republic. In other words, those who are vying for the highest office in the land should be of outstanding, upstanding moral character and fitness. But as it stands now, neither one of the two candidates or nominees for the mainstay political parties in these United States of America are what I would call morally fit or have the good character to be the leaders of a virtuous representative republic. You see, this is the untenable situation that we as a nation and as a people find ourselves in right here, right now, as I sit here and speak into this microphone, conveying this message unto you. It truly is a tragic set of events, a set of circumstances that has unfurled before our shocked and horrified eyes in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours. And folks, I do wish that I had words of comfort and solace to convey unto you. Unfortunately, I have no such words to convey. We are in this predicament, and we, in our capacity as the true ultimate wielders of sovereignty in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours, are going to have to overcome it. No one else is shouldered with the onus of the duty, obligation, and above all, responsibility to proactively maintain and safeguard our fundamental and inalienable God-given rights. Indeed, that is the very way that it is supposed to be. That is how our founding fathers had originally intended and designed this representative republic to be. But we have to be willing to accept the onus of that responsibility, to realize that that responsibility is not a delegable one, it is not for negotiation, and that we are in the position to stand up for our rights, and only we are. Because those rights were endowed to us by our Creator, the God of nature, that the only way that we can enjoy and exercise those rights are to proactively maintain and safeguard them. It's as Jeremy and I have oft-times reiterated on previous episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, that we have to go forth and realize that whenever we have rights, that there is always couched with it a duty, an obligation, and above all, a responsibility. It is an equal and opposite duty, obligation, and responsibility. And therefore, to understand that, we have to look back at the natural law tenets that form the bedrock foundation of not only our shared United States Constitution, but also our representative Republican form of government. Now, that is far easier said than done, particularly when you consider that the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists and their allies in the rank and file of the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media, and indeed the historical revisionists that infest our institutions of education from coast to coast and border to border, have been working for nearly a century and a half now towards indoctrinating the up-and-coming generation, to teach them a vision that has no connection with reality, no connection with logic or reason. It's all just done to whip them up into a fanatical, emotional state, thereby leaving them highly susceptible to the twisted machinations of con artists, charlatans, hucksters, snake oil salesmen. But you must realize that the natural character and the indomitable spirit of the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, we the people, is not based in any of that. It's based in rugged individualism. It's based in self-accountability, self-responsibility, and when those two things work in conjunction, then that ultimately leads to self-determination. But they want you to think that self-determination is greed. They want you to think that that is somehow inherently wicked or evil, that it has a negative connotation connected with it, when in fact nothing, truly, absolutely nothing, could be further from the truth. So how do we overcome it? How do we begin to place the United States of America back onto the path to prosperity? Again, it's as my first officer, Jeremy Grapenton, has so oft-times reiterated on previous episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer. The way to put the United States of America back onto the path to prosperity is to go back to basics, is to go back and learn the fundamental truths that are contained within the clear and concise language of the four corners of our shared United States Constitution. Because then you will know the truth. And the truth is what ultimately sets us free. The truth always has a way of shining through, always has a way of piercing through the lies and the logical fallacies and every other twisted and nefarious thing that the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists have attempted to cram down our throats and against our will. Remember that Aristotle said in his Art of Rhetoric that it is much easier for the people to believe the truth. That's the major problem that the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists face. Their entire ideology, which can only be called theft by any other name, is based on a lie. They are pushing for a lie. They are trying to deceive the people. And therefore, this is why you see them attempt to narrow the marketplace of ideas, because they ultimately know that their twisted machinations could not compete in the marketplace of ideas. It's why you see them try and use the twin cancerous doctrines of political correctness and moral relativism to further pervert and pollute the body politique of these United States of America. And it's why you see that they want to rewrite history. And Folks, as the great lover of history that I am, I find it wholly appalling as to what they're trying to do in American institutions of education to eradicate the true history of the United States of America. Now, what a lot of people will probably sit there and ask is, why is history important? Why is there any importance to something that happened a long time ago? How can that have any relevance to this modern, fast-paced society and world in which we live? Well, the answer to that question is, you begin to understand who you are. You begin to have an understanding of what you and your nation represent by delving into the history of your country. By going into the history, you begin to see how you came about, what it is that your nation has always held in high esteem and with high regard and value, and therefore you truly begin to unlock what makes this nation and people great. And so, again, this is why the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists have gone to the great lengths and extents that they have to rewrite our history, to change who we are. It is in the hope of making the American people more docile, more susceptible to these twisted goals and machinations of these frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists. Now, these nefarious groups will never stop. They will never quit reaching for their goal. This is why they politicize everything. And this is why on our previous episode, just the other night, Jeremy and I mentioned that we ought to be analyzing almost everything within the confines of the Constitution. And the reason that makes sense is when you recall that the entire constitutional apparatus of these United States of America is based upon the natural law tenets, which by their very nature are timeless, meaning they're just as applicable today as they were 235 years ago, as God willing they will be 235 years from today. And therefore, being timeless, they can be applied to nearly everything. It's based on that which makes humanity humanity. Again, this is not the type of analysis you would hear from the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media. It's not what you would hear on Quaff News. It's not what you would hear on Trump Bart Media. It's not what you would hear from Mike Pence even anymore. And if you did hear it from Mike Pence, you would know that he was not truly serious about it. The reason you'd know he's not truly serious about it is because he has never once, since he betrayed himself, done anything to hold Trump accountable for the statements he made. Again, the people that are buying into Pence being some sort of recompense for Trump are the ones that would sit here and believe that the vice president is anything other than a largely ceremonial role, that it would have any impact on the unspeakable lack of restraint and control on the part of the mafioso quafioso. If you think that, I think you are going to be highly surprised and frustrated by what's happened. But again, remember that the old adage goes that those who fail to learn from the mistakes of the past are doomed to repeat history. Well, as I recall, back in 2008, one of the things that the Gutless Opposition Party, or GOP, attempted to do in order to placate true constitutional conservatives was to have the now biggest sellout in modern political memory, at least in living modern political memory, that of Sarah Palin as vice president for the woefully inadequate candidate of John F.N. McCain. That didn't work. She didn't secure a victory. John McCain was still a loser, just as Donaldolph Julius Caesar Trumpolini is a loser. You see, unless and until we can begin to come to terms with exactly what it is that is plaguing and ailing this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours, as well as this vibrant community of popular sovereigns of ours, we're going to continue to see this death spiral of the United States not only continue unabated, but to accelerate at an exponential rate. We cannot tolerate this, we cannot accept it, because it goes against all that we hold near and dear, both as a nation and as a people. Now, that is a difficult thing to admit. It's a difficult thing to admit because it's one of those prodding, soul-searching questions that nobody likes to answer, and truly, I don't even like to ask. But if we don't have the gumption to ask and answer those questions, then we are not going to be able to pull ourselves up from the political muck that is plaguing this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours. We are not going to have the gumption to overcome the twisted, dark machinations and the manipulative course of conduct of the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists. And folks, while Trump may say that everything is negotiable and that he is this greatly deal maker, you don't want to go out and negotiate with terrorists. We see that, again, Barack Hussein Obama has broken that time-honored, well-established tradition by, essentially paying for the return of American hostages. The reason he's doing that is he doesn't want it to become a Jimmy Carter moment. And I know that one of the things that I have oft-times reiterated on previous episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, is that I have claimed that these disastrous 2 terms of the Barack Hussein Obama regime have been that long-lost second term of Carter. He is the ideological and spiritual forebearer of the failed, frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist policies and agenda of Jimmy Carter. And we see that it's just as detrimental today as it was during the Carter years. And we have to overcome that. We have to be willing to take whatever steps are necessary to promote our ideals, to stand up for freedom and liberty, to be the robust and rugged individualists that we are. Because when you stop and think about what the purpose of a representative Republican form of government is, it's that our government was designed in such a way as to protect all of the fundamental and inalienable God-given rights of all of the popular sovereigns. That means that these rights are ours, that they don't belong to anyone else, that they cannot be delegated, that they are non-negotiable. But again, that's something that the gnawed-off Julius Caesar Trumpolini cannot wrap his mind around. He simply fails to understand it. He cannot understand it. And so what it says also is that the disillusioned conservatives have sold out. They've forgotten who they are. They've forgotten what they stand for. They've forgotten what they represent. And I think that that is another reason why we see the naked Trump statues. And sure, it's a ha-ha funny moment. But it also speaks volumes as to the tactics and strategies of character assassination, of attempting to belittle and besmirch the appearance of his opponents during the primary process, and again, just dragging the entire political narrative of the United States of America into the gutter, into the proverbial gutter, slinging mud at people, instead of really addressing the failed policy positions that have placed us in the untenable situation of which we suffer through right now as I sit here and speak into this microphone. It's unacceptable. Truly unacceptable. And the only way that the United States of America can overcome this unacceptable, untenable, unsustainable situation is for the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, we the people, to take our position, to take that position which is expected of us, to understand our role, our duty, our obligation, and above all our responsibilities in our capacity as the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours. Again, that is something that is far easier said than done, particularly when you consider to the great extent at which the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists, their allies, and the rank and file of the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media, as well as those historical revisionists who have infiltrated our institutions of higher learning, and indeed all of our institutions of education. They are the ones that have polluted things. They are the ones that have gotten us away from the self-evident truths upon which our founding fathers were willing to risk everything to bring about this independent, free, liberty-loving nation that is the United States of America. It's all by design. It's all orchestrated. It's all purposefully done. And none of it is done with your best interests in mind. or with your best interests at heart. That is unacceptable. That is something that we as a nation and as a people should rise up to, standing shoulder to shoulder in solidarity and unity to reject, to cast off as untenable, unacceptable, unfathomable, unsustainable. Again, this nation requires that we, the people, act in a way that is proactive, act in a way that is congruous with the foundational image of this nation as envisioned by our founding fathers 235 years ago at the conception of this beloved representative republic of ours. And you see, this is why, again, the 2016 presidential election cycle is turning into such a tragedy. I would say it's a comedy of errors, but the errors are coming to an end. This is now to a point where we see that the graduates of Pavlov School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media has once again chosen the nominee for the gutless opposition party, or GOP. They have once again cemented the course of the weakest candidate to vie against Hillary Rotten Clinton. And when Trump tries to sit there and say that the system's rigged, well, it is rigged, but it's rigged in his favor. That's not what he's complaining about. He knows that he's going to lose. He knows that he is just unacceptable to the vast majority of the American electorate. And he's not willing to change. He's not willing to assume a position that's reasonable, or to assume a position that would be palatable to the vast majority of American citizens. No, he is there running ramshod and making a mockery over our electorate and our electoral process. That's why he went out there and said that if he went out onto Fifth Avenue and shot somebody, he wouldn't lose a voter. He honestly believes that, and he is laughing about that kind of loyalty. That, folks, is a cult of personality. That is something that we should be exceedingly mindful of, because if we allow that to become the new norm, in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours, then we are allowing this nation to unravel before us. We are allowing the nation to fall apart. And we cannot afford that. We can ill afford that right now, particularly when you consider that the United States of America is in the midst of an identity crisis in conjunction with a slew of constitutional crises brought about due, thanks in no small part, to the tutelage of this disastrous Barack Hussein Obama regime. Now, of course, the frothing at the mouth leftists are going to try and say that that's just because everyone who speaks up against Obama is racist. Of course, that's poppycock. That has, again, no basis in reality, no basis in logic or reason. That's just one of those frantic buzzwords that they have created in the hopes of making people just shut off their mental faculties and capabilities, to try and go about using the twin cancerous doctrines of political correctness and moral relativism to make a point that is simply not there to be made. Again, this is why we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, have done all that we can to warn you about this, to explain to you that this sort of thing is unacceptable. And again, the only ones who can truly place this nation back onto the path to prosperity is none other than we the people. That is by the very design of this representative republic. That is what our founding fathers believed in. And of course, it makes sense when you recall that their inherent distrust of centralized power and authority is rooted in the fact that the entire American War of Independence, which was a long, drawn-out, and very bloody affair, was waged against the centralized power and authority of Crown and Parliament. The Crown and the Parliament said that the colonists, who had no say in the election of British Parliament, who had no true representation, were represented fully, nonetheless, through this notion, this abstract notion of virtual representation. Now, that's a laughable notion, saying that just because a piece of paper says that you are represented, that means you're represented, even though you have no direct say over it, no direct say over who is in that representative body, and even though it was ignoring the various houses of Burgess and other legislative bodies that had arisen in the colonies, You see, what they had done is essentially the same thing that is occurring with the detente wing of the gutless opposition party, or GOP, the same thing that the Lion Branch Trumpidians are trying to do when they push for that tyranny of false unity. And that's this. They are trying to silence us. They're trying to say that we should simply sit down, shut up, and accept whatever they give us because we have virtual representation. You see, they are acting just like the Crown, just like the British Parliament that had treated the American citizenry and true American patriots as second-class subjects. But we're subjects to no one. The United States of America fought to liberate itself from such an erroneous system, to free itself from the chains and shackles of governmental tyranny, bondage, oppression, and servitude. That is how we are a nation of free people. That is why the United States of America is a nation of laws and not of men. But the only way that we can fully embrace that is to admit that we must be free. And that is why it is so important for us all to foster that fluent and working knowledge and understanding of our shared United States Constitution, and thereby our fundamental and inalienable God-given rights. And we have to be vigilant with that, because no one else can do it, as I've said already. And our rights are endowed to us by a higher power. Now, I know that that's going to offend a lot of the frothing of the mouth Fabian socialist leftists because they adhere so strongly to that notion of moral relativism. That's part of why they also push the cancerous doctrine of political correctness. But as we have so oft times reiterated on previous episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, that sort of twisted machination and mindset has no place in an open and honest society like that of the United States of America. So again, we are the ones that are to be the watchmen, the vanguard of liberty, and we will be. We will never turn our backs on that sacred mission. We will never betray what it is that made us great, both as a nation and as a people. And it really is how we will come together. That's why we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, say that there must be true unity, not this tyranny of false unity. And it comes from the only thing that can unify us, the only thing that has ever unified us or defined us as a nation and a people, and that is our sacred Constitution. So again, folks, we ask that you stay true to that, that you continue to delve into this, read your Constitution, find out what is so significant and amazing about that document, because it is what defines you. It is what liberates you, and it is what protects you, but at the same time, to maintain that, to safeguard that, and to protect that, you have to be willing to stand up and proactively act in its favor. Truly, that is the only way it will remain a viable thing for all of posterity. One of the things that we have oft-times reiterated on previous episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, is just how there is this untenable double standard that exists within the rank and file of the graduates of Pavlov School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media. You know, we have to send out our hearts and our condolences to the people of Louisiana who are suffering through this historic monumental flooding that is just reeking through their land. And, you know, they've had a hard time ever since Katrina, but going back to the point of which I was opening this segment with respect to the double standard within the rank and file of the graduates of Pavlov School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media, we see that with the coverage of the monumental flooding, the disaster zone that is occurring within the state of Louisiana now, the graduates of Pavlov School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media are not going out and reporting this in the same ham-handed way, ham-fisted way that they did against George W. Bush back during Katrina some 11 years ago. Can you believe it's been 11 years? I know, it's hard for me to accept that it's been that long too. I was in college at the time, and I remember watching some of the lopsided, one-sided reporting that was coming forth from the salivating mainstream media, and just being flabbergasted that they were trying to lay this at the blame or at the feet of George W. Bush. Now, George W. Bush is not one of my favorite presidents. He was not a true conservative. He did not live up to constitutional compositionism. But what he did do was have a love for this country. It may have not been shown in the way that true conservatives would have liked, but the way that the media attempted to eviscerate him throughout his 2 terms of office was just shameful. It's unspeakable. And what they were trying to say at the time was that he had ill-prepared the FEMA camps for any and everything, and that he was at least partially responsible for the hurricane coming onto the shore. Well, no, that's not true. It's everything that the media wanted to convey. They wanted to convey that it was the Republicans, that they didn't care, that it was racially based. It was all this sort of fluff and nonsense that has become the hallmarks of the Barack Hussein Obama regime, and throughout the disastrous 2 terms of said regime. And it just goes to show that they do everything they can to make us look bad, to try and sow the seeds of division and divisiveness in the heart of this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and vibrant community of popular sovereigns of ours. And for what? What does it gain us? What does it do to benefit us? Well, when we stop and think about it, evaluating and examining it under the totality of the circumstances, we can only be left with one inexorable conclusion: that it's all designed to try and pin the blame for someone else. It's all designed to try and make things appear as though they are worse than they actually are. And that's what the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists have always done. It's because they believe in this incrementalized adoption of socialism. It's because they are diametrically opposed to all that we hold near and dear, both as a nation and as a people. And it's because they want to put forth a false narrative. They realize that false perception, as I've actually mentioned in a previous solo flight special edition of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, that this false perception, they think they can create it and that it will be more powerful than reality. And of course, with their friends in the rank and file of the graduates of Pavlov School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media, they think that they have worked out the perfect avenue by which to achieve their diabolical, twisted, and un-American goals and agenda. And it's as my first officer, Jeremy Grapington, has mentioned on previous episodes of the Wright Flyer as well, that they are just moving forward with this type of propaganda. And therefore, they cannot allow anything to come to the forefront that would challenge this narrative that they've created. And it's why they also try and cram through a twisted agenda, and why they try and have it infiltrate the facets of our daily lives. And again, this goes back to what we had said on our latest episode, that maybe we need to start basically evaluating and including the Constitution in everything, in the facets of our daily lives, to begin to combat this sort of chicanery that has become a hallmark of the media, of this frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist agenda and narrative that truly has no place in an open and honest and above all free society like that of the United States of America. So we see that this is the double standard that they keep pushing. And of course, we see that Barack Hussein Obama basically signed the emergency paperwork to declare it a disaster, a national disaster, and then promptly returned to the golf course. But what makes it even worse under the tutelage of Barack Hussein Obama than it ever was under George W. Bush is the fact that we see that there is all of this racial animus and all of these race-based violent protests and you know, the riots, the racial riots that are occurring in Milwaukee right now. But no, that's not important enough to get Barack Hussein Obama off the golf course. He has a tin ear. He truly has a tin ear when it comes to what we hold near and dear, both as a nation and as a people. It's all about him and his twisted agenda and pushing forth his regime and his designs come hell or high water. And of course, we here in the United States of America demand and deserve better than what we've been seeing, than what has been unleashed by this insufferable Barack Hussein Obama regime. But it's not so easy to try and bring this nation back to the path of prosperity. And again, it's why we lament the disaster that this 2016 presidential election cycle has metamorphosized into. It truly was our election cycle to win, and we blew it. We dropped the ball, America. We dropped the ball by allowing the New York billionaire, businessman, real estate tycoon, and all-around Bulgarian, Donald J. Trump, also known as John Barron and also known as John Miller, to become the nominee for the gutless opposition party, or GOP. He is the one candidate that could make Hillary look human. One candidate who had even higher negatives than Madam Clinton. It's disgusting. So how do we overcome this? How do we address this? Well, the way we address it is to get back to basics. And we do that by going back to the Constitution. And we find that the natural law tenets that underpin not only our shared United States Constitution, but also our representative Republican form of government are timeless. I know that I've said this both in previous segments of this evening's Solo Flight Special Edition and in previous episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer. It's not something that can be ignored, because it is a quintessential part of who we are, both as a nation and as a people. So, to surmount the seemingly insurmountable odds that have been stacked against us by this cabal of the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists, their friends and allies in the historical revisionists, and the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media, we have to remember who we are. We have to remember that it is through our own words, deeds, and actions, and our own belief sets, and our own capacity as the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours, that we overcome all of these hurdles, obstacles, and adversities that have been placed in our path. Now, of course, that again is easier said than done, because these nefarious elements have combined in such a way to make it exceedingly difficult for us to overcome the hurdles, obstacles, and adversities that they have placed in our path. But we can. We can, because that is the true nature of the American people. We have always been able to overcome everything that has been a challenge to us, everything that has sought to destroy us and to pit us against one another. And the reason for that is that we understand that an intrinsic part of who we are is to be this perfect or more perfect union that we came together to create at the Constitutional Convention. You see, folks, this is how the Constitution ties into our fast-paced modern world. This is how it is just as applicable today as it was 235 years ago, as God willing it will be 235 years from now. But, of course, it means that we must also begin to hold accountable those who have engaged in creating this election cycle of betrayal. Now, I know that we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, have nicknamed this 2016 presidential election cycle as the election cycle of betrayal. And that is a very apt name for it. It is a fitting name for it, because we have seen so many brazen elements of this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and vibrant community of popular sovereigns of ours turn their back on what matters, what is intrinsically important to us, both as a nation and as a people. And it's unfortunate that we see this occurring, because it shows just how divided we are. And folks, the United States of America has not been as divided as it is today since 1860. That's right, the year before the outbreak of the American Civil War. Again, I think it is of the utmost importance that we come together and that we sit down and consider what it is that is facing our nation, why it is that we have reached this untenable situation, why it seems that things are reaching critical mass in the United States of America. Certainly, it's the divisive tactics of the Barack Hussein Obama regime, but it's also the continuation of what we have seen with Trump, the way that Trump has gone out, and it just goes truly to the heart of the matter of what is facing the nation. It's shocking because we are better than what Trump is trying to force upon us, but no one wants to believe that. No one wants to get past this cult of personality. And it's an alarming trait that we've seen repeat itself in the 2008 election. We saw it repeat again in the 2012 election. The supporters of Barack Hussein Obama literally believed that the man could do no wrong, that he was some great messianic figure that was going to push us into a post-racial society. And there is truly no way to get around the problems we face. We have to, though, because we have no choice. This nation is ours. It is our beloved homeland. No one else can claim ownership over the foundational documents or the way that our nation came about and what it is that our nation stands for. And that's the problem. The government wants to make it to where only a certain type of people can claim ownership, or that they want to give special rights and freedoms and liberties and privileges to insular and discrete minorities. But if you go back to the basics of our shared United States Constitution, you will find that equal protection under the law, this entire notion that the United States of America is a nation of laws and not of men, is at the heart of who we are, both as a nation and as a people. But of course, the historical revisionists want to erase that. They want to eradicate that. And it's when they do that that they begin to dumb down society. That is when all of a sudden it appears as though Donald J. Trump is acceptable. We can't say that the nation must be allowed to do this. And it's not just the nation being allowed to do this, it's these charlatans, it's these hucksters, because they have worked on reshaping us. But for what? What purpose? What gain? What benefit? And that's the same question that I need to ask of people like Lush Bimbo and Sean Wannity and the others that have just gone out there and betrayed who we are, have sold out their principles. And yes, this may be repetitive, but damn, it's so maddening. It's so frustrating. It brings us to the brink of madness each and every time we consider it. But that's okay. Maybe, just maybe, we could go out into the floodwaters in Louisiana and find the Halliburton time and weather control device. You know, the one that was probably the maker of Dick Cheney's pacemaker that allowed him to carry out whatever twisted and nefarious deed that the graduates of Pavlov School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media said he would do. I mean, give me an ever-loving break. I can be as insane as the left if I wanted to. I just don't know that I can find a tinfoil hat that's going to fit me that well, or one that's in my style either. So it has to be done in such a way as to live up to the principles that are at the heart of our nation and that are the intrinsic part of the body politique of the United States of America. And that's the thing. When you look at the current state of affairs with respect to this 2016 presidential election cycle, you can't figure out who is actually talking about the Constitution, who's actually standing up for our proper scope and application of government as mandated by the clear and concise language of our shared United States Constitution. And it goes that way because it unravels. It shows that they aren't working towards the Constitution. And it really is a major problem. We must stand up for our liberties, as only we can, as only the American people can. It must be our part. It must be our work. No one else can do this. No one else is endowed to represent us other than our chosen representatives. And of course, that too has become a problem. Why are we having a lack of representation? Why has that become an intrinsic problem that flows down through this system? The answer is that it works in tandem with their goals. Their goals are to continue to perpetuate their growth in power, to expand their breadth of power, even though that works against we the people. Again, it ignores who we are as a nation, as a people, as an ideology. Because if you remember, the United States of America truly is based on an ideology. It is an idea. It is a philosophy. It is wholly unique unto itself. No other nation on earth can claim that our system is truly a true aspect of that, of being free. Free. True freedom. Where does that come from? What does that mean? It means that we have to be accountable. We have to be willing to work for ourselves in accordance with our goals to help build a greater nation. But we can't do that by trying to blame people for hurricanes or claiming that hurricane response was wrong. And you see, that too is at the heart of one of the major problems with the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists. They think that the government is who should provide for everyone. But if you turn back the hands of time to 1900, when the hurricane at Galveston had occurred, you'll see that what the people did at that time, they didn't turn to the federal government. They didn't call for the federal government to give them aid. They just picked themselves up by their bootstraps and they went to work to rebuild. And not just rebuild, but to build it better than it had been before the mark of destruction, before the storm had wiped them out. So, to build that, it has to be done with our own ingenuity and creativity. It has to be done by our own effort. So we do that by looking to our own thought process here. You see, that's the beauty of America. You can be whatever you want to be. You can create whatever you want to. Or at least at one time you could. Unfortunately, that has been stripped from us. The frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists have been working nonstop to try and take that away from us. It's what they want to do, and that is to pit us against one another. The frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists always try and use our own misgivings, our own fears against us. And they do that by looking at the fears that each of us have, the misconceptions that we can have, and they do it by creating the problems themselves. Remember, this is all part of Cloward-Piven. That was that system that was created by those two academicians out of Columbia University that wanted to implement a permanent welfare state in the United States of America by overwhelming our safety nets. Now see, the United States of America was never supposed to have a safety net. If you go back to Social Security that was created by that frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftist Franklin Delano Roosevelt, that was not supposed to be permanent either. Funny how that works. All of these things build up on each other. And it's all done through intellectual disingenuousness, through lies, through chicanery, through fraud. And that is why we really should not be tolerant of people who are trying to orchestrate another fraud upon us, trying to force us into a acceptable thing. And what is it? It is truly insurmountable, the amount of political excrement that these people stir up. Identity politics? What is it? What is it that they are hoping to accomplish? Well, It's the utter and annihilation of our free system, of our nation, and of our identity as a people. And it can't go on like this. We can't just allow that to become the new norm, because we are greater than that. It's as I have reiterated before. The sum of this nation is greater than the whole of its parts. And again, that falls back to those brilliant, beautiful, and wonderful natural law tenets that form the bedrock foundation of our Constitution, our nation, our culture, and our society. You see, that's what a lot of the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialists want to accomplish. They want to ignore the fact that there is a distinctly unique American culture. Why? Because they want us to believe that our culture is not unique. Because if it's unique, that means it has the ability to be superior to other cultures. Say, for instance, Islamofascism. And we notice that they do bend over backwards to allow the Islamofascists to get away with nearly everything. But again, that's not beneficial. That doesn't help us. That doesn't propel this nation. It holds us back. It hampers us. It works against us. But again, to work into what matters, we have to build upon the foundation that was left to us by our founding fathers. You know, it was meant to go into posterity. It was meant to be an intrinsic part of who we are. Now, that cannot be ignored. But that's what the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists do. They ignore it. They want to create their own image for America. But that image is that they believe in something wholly different than freedom. They believe in a top-down system, just like Karl Marx did. But if you look at the historical record, Karl Marx was able to create anything that worked. No, he really didn't. The Communist Manifesto is chock full of errors, logical fallacies, and it really has never worked where it has been tried. Now, the great lie that they come up with is they try and say that communism is never really has been attempted in true pure form. Poppycock! What a bunch of bovine excrement and lacking in reality. Communism doesn't work because it disregards human nature, and it presupposes that the government will always act in the best interest of the people. But no, it creates a dictatorship. In fact, even the language within communism, that of the dictatorship of the proletariat, it shows that they are not about freedom or honesty or independence. It's about domination. And when you look at it in that light, maybe that's when it begins to make sense as to why they would align themselves with the Islamofascists. Again, it's because they want this collectivist ideology and mentality. But at the heart of rugged Americanism, rugged individualism, it is our own mind and capabilities that matter. That is how great fortunes were built in the United States. That is how we were able to overcome every hurdle and obstacle and adversity placed in our path. But we have forgotten that in so many ways. We have been taught to loathe and despise those who are willing to take the initiative, those who are willing to assume a significant risk to ensure that things are made better for people, that our society is allowed to thrive and flourish as it had never previously been able to. But of course, what that ultimately entails is that we hold ourselves accountable for our own actions, and that we hold others accountable for their words, deeds, and actions. Again, freedom requires that each and every one of us understands the role that we play in our capacity as the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours. Again, That's much easier said than done, but it must be done. It must be done to preserve the sanctity, vitality, and above all, viability of this great republic of ours. No one can do that but we, ourselves. And I know that it has been taught for so long that that's just not the case, that that cannot work, that you're insane if you think that that is how things come to fruition in the grand scheme of things. But again, that's bovine excrement. The whole intent of what we do here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, is to build you up, is to empower you, is to give you the ability to stand up to these frauds and say, no, enough is enough. Now, with that said, it is time for us to begin our descent. I'm going to go ahead and send the flight attendant back for one last round of alcohol. I guarantee you she's not hiring any media people, nor does she have a Halliburton time weather control device. She's just there to pour you alcohol. As always, folks, I'm your captain, Randy Wright, and I want to thank you for tuning in to our program today. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, I invite you to leave them either here on our YouTube page or our Facebook page. And on top of that, I invite you to follow us at Twitter with the Twitter handle at Radio Aviation EX. One more time, folks, that's at Radio Aviation EX. And there you will find the departure board that lists my personal Twitter account, the personal Twitter account of my first officer, Jeremy Grapenton, our Blogspot account, which I do need to update here soon, folks, and also our Cafe Press account that has all sorts of trinkets and goodies, from drinking glasses, all sorts of apparel, laptop covers, phone covers and protectors, tote bags, watches, clocks, you name it, with either our classic traditional logo on it or our first class passenger logo on it. There's all sorts of good things there, folks, with reasonable prices. Go ahead and give us a little bit of support so we can continue to bring you the indelible yet pure sense of enlightenment that we always do. As always, folks, thank you for flying the Wright Flyer. We will see you next time. Please do take